I cannot believe I'm doing this. If you had asked me 2, 3 years ago if that I would be, do I think it's possible that I'd be making a video anything like this? I would have told you were crazy and probably Larry Wilmored you and told you to go fuck yourself. But here I am because I am freaking me and have to stick to the damn facts, even though it would be easier for me to just take a moment and be a normal human being and say, oh, yay, a person who was really, really, really bad to me had something bad happen to them. I'm happy. I can't be. I'm not the kind of person who is happy bad things happen to people who are bad to me. And I cannot sit back and see all these faux leftists mocking a guy who hit rock bottom and has, finally had to admit the thing he probably never really wanted to admit was that Milo Yiannopoulos is a victim. Specifically, a victim of childhood sexual assault. A very vulnerable place, an emasculating place. I will get to more of this later, but this may sound crazy coming from me. It's not that I believe that Milo is an especially honest person. We all know he's not. But there are fundamental elements of his statement that I believe. And I want to go through this for you guys. Not necessarily to help him, because I really think he'll be fine. He's got more lives than a cat. He always manages to land on his feet. I'm not worried about Milo. He's well connected enough. He's got enough friends in influential places. He'll be fine. But for other guys who have been victims of sexual assault, this is important to talk about because the way men manifest symptoms of being victims or survivors or whatever you want to call it of sexual assault manifest it in somewhat different ways than women do. And it's important to understand those symptoms. So I'm going to do a short version of his statement and then give you guys some information and you can do with it what you want. I'm not doing this for people to think I'm a great person. I'm not doing this to win any popularity contest because, my God, doing anything even remotely to defend this guy is the most unpopular position you can possibly be in. And you guys saw yesterday, I think he has done incredibly wrong things. The word before the last election was deplorable, but you can't say that anymore. I don't even think his comments about pedophilia and pederasty are in the top 10 terrible things that Milo Yiannopoulos has done and said on the internet. And don't for a second think that the people condemning him will not talk to him in 5 years. He's nuclear right now. But the very same people condemning him now will take him back if he rehabilitates his public image. And there are ways of doing that. Other people have. Look at Mel Gibson. Okay? So let's get into this. I'll try to make it as quick as possible. I am going to skip parts because I don't want to wallow in this. But I just want to talk about some critical things. He starts off, I am a gay man and a child abuse victim, and that's important for reasons I'll get into in a bit. My relationship with my abusers is complicated by the fact that, at the time, I did not perceive what was happening to me as abusive. I can look back now and see that it was. I still don't view myself as a victim, but I am one. Another critical statement, we'll get to it later. I'm going to skip all this stuff because it's stuff he's already said. My experience as a victim led me to believe I could say anything I wanted to on this subject, no matter how outrageous. I absolutely believe that's true, and I think that's connected to his virulent hatred of Dworksider feminists that spills into all feminists. Based on this, it is possible that he envied the sadness porn that came out of that Andrea Dworkin style, I was a victim, I was assaulted, because There's good reason to believe that a part of him was crying out to be able to get that social validation for what happened to them. But men have to suffer in silence a lot more than women, because sexual assault is something that a lot of people believe doesn't happen to men. He also says, but I understand that my usual blend of British sarcasm, provocation, gallows humor might have come across as flippancy, a lack of care for other victims, or worse, advocacy. Buddy, you wrote for Breitbart. That whole website advocates a right-wing viewpoint. I do not believe sex with 13-year-olds is okay. When I mentioned the number 13, I was talking about myself and the age I lost my own virginity. My God, Milo, you didn't lose your virginity, you were assaulted. It is not sex. It is sexual assault. You are still in denial, man. The shit is critical. Here, people, stop laughing him, stop cheering his fall, and look and think and freaking learn. Because bad things, teachable things, don't just happen to people we think are fucking saints. You know, he's adamant that he doesn't condone pedophilia, and I believe that is true. I believe that he was, in fact, talking about himself. I believe that he's talking about himself in a lot of the things he talks about. I think when he went after me and said I get my tits out for a living, implying I wasn't a real journalist, I think even there he was talking about himself. I think when he started saying that my career would be over at 40, I think he was talking about himself. I think all the nasty insults he flings at people, I think he's actually talking about himself. And like I said, I don't know. I'm not sitting here armchair psychoanalyzing him. The purpose of this video is to show why we should be, oh God, listen and believing Milo. If you believe that whole listen and believe thing, I don't necessarily think you should. I think what I'm doing here right now is the process of trust but verify to get beyond listen and believe. And this is why I'm verifying this. But all these people who are listen and believe, listen and believe, listen and believe are mocking this guy now, and give me a break. I cannot leave yesterday's video where it was at, because it was kind of a glib look at the Bill Maher thing. I feel like that would be insensitive considering how real shit has gotten between then and now. You know, he lost his book deal, he lost his job. I mean, okay, he resigned, but he resigned the way Michael Flynn resigned, right? He was probably fired. And this is serious. Male victims of sexual assault against men and boys is just as important as sexual assault against women and girls. But it's not talked about nearly as much. And I don't know if you can read this. Maybe I should make it a bit bigger. I will put a link in the description box. Okay, big one. Defining characteristic of Milo Yiannopoulos. Denial of vulnerability. Difficulty recognizing that what happened was sexual abuse. Hence me saying it was not losing your virginity. It was rape. Okay? Losing your virginity is a consensual sex act, and referring to it that way is difficulty recognizing that what happened was abuse. High need for control in interactions with others, the talking over, the acting out, the lashing out, may appear stubborn and rigid for control in interactions with others and frequently engage in power struggles. Again, I'm going to remind you guys that this is not a psychological analysis of Milo Yiannopoulos. I wouldn't do that. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a social worker. I am just reading a website of characteristics observed in male sexual abuse victims. Confusing regarding sexual orientation. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but the guy wore a big old string of pearls and a pearl bracelet on Real Time with Bill Maher. Confusion of emotional needs with sex. Go on Kotaku in action. You will see Milo referenced with big black cock over and over and over again. It was a type of meme he himself started. Gender shame, confusion and anxiety regarding masculine identity. May exhibit more feminine characteristics in an attempt to separate from negative masculine image or to avoid identifying with the male abuser. I think we're getting to the bottom of a dislike of feminism right here. I skipped these two because multiple compulsive behaviors. He talked about drinking. Pattern of victimizing self or others. We're talking about one of the worst harassers on the internet according to the mainstream media, right, guys? Well, okay, most victims do not become offenders. Fair. But in guys like Milo, many dysfunctional behaviors may be seen as an attempt to feel more powerful, punish oneself, or numb the unwanted feelings connected with the abuse. This may involve passive-aggressive behaviors or subtle put-downs. In his case, not so subtle. The next thing's telling. Some men act out by exposing obscene phone calling, Twitter, or voyeuristic activities. Anger towards self can involve suicide attempts or putting oneself in high-risk situations which could lead to injury or death without actually attempting suicide. The Berkeley riot, anyone? Boundary transparency, an unrealistic fear that others can see their failures and vulnerability. This is what I think I triggered when I called him out. A vulnerability in journalistic practice. I pointed out that he'd made a mistake and he flipped out on me. Contextualized now. Makes sense. May have a history of boundary intrusions other than sexual abuse, especially physical and emotional abuse. Living in a world of insults is a form of boundary intrusion. An insult is violating the boundaries of civility. And someone who who has decent personal boundaries, healthy personal boundaries, understands there's a time and a place for that, but not in most of the places that Milo is exhibiting them. So that is a potential symptom. Blowing your mind yet? I'm reeling. Like I said, I can't believe I'm doing this. Chaotic relationships. So there you have it. I'm not saying this is a diagnosis. I'm not saying that, this is definitely for sure him. Again, I'm doing this to talk about the subject. It's a good opportunity to talk about the subject. Okay? This is a real, as Barack Obama liked to say, teachable moment. So let's leave it here and let's get some truth here. Key facts. Boys and men can be sexually used and abused, and it has nothing to do with how masculine they are. If a boy liked the attention he was getting or got sexually aroused during abuse or even sometimes wanted the attention or sexual contact, this does not mean he wanted or liked being manipulated or abused or that any part of what happened in any way was his responsibility or fault. And this is a big issue with male victims of sexual abuse because they get physically aroused sometimes, even if they're not emotionally aroused. People are like, how can that be? Well, it can be. The body just responds to stimulus. It's not the same as what your more complex emotions are doing. Sexual abuse harms boys and girls in ways that are similar and different but equally harmful. The sexual abuse of boys has nothing to do with an abuser's sexual orientation, and that's why I called out that part here, that I am a gay man and a child abuse victim, not I am a gay man because I was a child abuse victim. Very telling. A boy abused by a male is not necessarily gay, nor was he abused because he's gay, nor can the abuse make him gay. But this is something a lot of gay men feel incredibly conflicted by. I'm not saying it's in this case, but a lot of gay men who were abused, part of them worries that it's because they were abused. Not so. Girls and women can sexually abuse boys. The boys are not lucky. Are you hearing me, Riverdale? Good God, that show. Most boys who are sexually abused will not go on to sexually abuse others. The last thing I want to close on is, I don't know if it's in this statement, but I've seen a lot of people on social media jumping all over Milo because he said something about seeing things happening and he didn't talk about it. He didn't report it. And he also says it was a media witch hunt. Well, okay, he's not just saying this is a cynical media witch hunt, which is the way it's being reported by a lot of people. What he's actually saying is this is a cynical media witch hunt from people who don't care about children. That's a blanket statement. That's collective blame. I don't believe that is true in every case. I think some people are just the abuse of children hits people in a really squishy place. People get enraged to the point of irrationality. It's nope, 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 don't want to think about it, nope, nope, go away. You're disgusting, you're a freak, get out, no. It's almost like in order to prove you're human, you have to condemn pedophilia. So I think there's a lot of emotional reaction. Now, the fact that this video has been out for more than a year, I can confirm that. I remember, people can confirm I said this. When he did that podcast, I said, well, they just gave him Oppo research if Trump wins. And that's exactly what happened. That's the game. That's the political game. And so, you know, yes, they held this video back because it was dirt if they needed to take him down. That's the game. Both sides do it. He's done it himself. He tried to do it to me, sending people to dig into my past, and when they couldn't find anything, made it up. So while what he's saying is accurate, this is politics. This is being in public, and this is why I made the distinction in my video yesterday, the difference between free speech, speaking your mind, voicing your opinions, and doing the equivalent on the internet of yelling fire in a crowded theater when there is no fire. This is an important distinction to make. But I understand he's feeling defensive here and that he is working through the process. It's a bit of denial here, even though it's true. And the line that actually broke my heart is, this isn't how I wanted my parents to find out about this. Of all the things he's done, this is the thing that causes shame to his parents. My God. But people are, oh, by the way, Milo, if you don't want to be an advocate, don't talk about the fact that you're donating 10% of the royalties to the book that got canceled and you're shopping around for a new publisher to child sex abuse charities. That is advocacy. So, and I'm going to go easy on him because, yeah, he's reeling. This is hard for him. He's trying to reclaim his dignity. He's trying to reassert any sense of power he has and safety. That bubble that sex assault victims build around themselves has been busted. So we got to go a bit easy on the guy. But no, donating a percentage of royalties to child sex abuse from a book is advocacy. Okay? It is. It's fundraising. It's raising awareness. Sorry, Milo. You're an advocate now. But people have been getting on him about being at parties and seeing things happen and not doing anything about it. And I can't find it here, but he's not the only one. And this is an issue that if he actually wants to do something good, he can raise awareness of this issue without naming names. Now, that's advocacy, but this does happen. And let me tell you something, even when you try to do something about it, even when you tell someone, even when you try to speak up, when you try to stop that wrong, you get shut down. You're treated like a troublemaker. I did it. I saw something. I said something. And I was treated like a troublemaker for 2 years until the organization, the problem finally got so big that dozens of, in this case it was women, didn't necessarily had to be, came forward. And all of a sudden, my first report back in the day was super important. Now, it turned out eventually these other women came forward because they saw what was happening to me. But sometimes, even when you do come forward, if the people involved are powerful enough and the structures keeping them in power are rigid enough, it doesn't do any good. And when you're a young person, male or female, especially if you come from lesser means and all of a sudden you're in this Hollywood environment or you're in big tech or you're in, you know, these places like, wow, this is the Emerald City of my childhood dreams. you've probably already been softened up or partially exploited just to get there. And so you see it, you may not realize until later that it was wrong, or you don't realize that it's something wrong that you have the power to do something about because it happened to you too, and nobody helped you. And this is a thing I try not to do. And so like I said, I can't believe I'm doing this. As I said on Twitter, you can absolutely hate something a person has done, but still feel compassion to the things that led them to do it. And this is what I'm trying to do here. It's a serious thing. You know, there's no such thing as a perfect victim. And I think some of us who are sort of on that social justice side, who claim to care about sexual assault and have given other people that we like better the chance to tell their stories and give them support. If we are actually believers in the philosophies and the issues, we don't just support people we like in these circumstances. And so I'm trying to be honest with that. And I think that if we can be fair and honest regarding people who have not been especially fair or kind to us, then that is the only way to make the world better without being a so-called advocate. Taking the high ground. And the number of people who quoted Barack and Michelle Obama and said, when they go low, we go high, that I see now piling on this guy. Shame on you. That's not going high. That's going low. If you want to go high, listen to what he's saying. Except that even if you don't want to believe that there is credibility in his statement, there is believability in his statement. And take it for what it is. You don't have to like what he's done. I don't like what he's done. I do feel for him as a human being. And I think what happened to him when he was younger was terrible and valid, and he deserves to be able to talk about it. And if he wants to use gallows humor to talk about his own experiences, that's fine. I hope he's learned the mistake he made was that he didn't contextualize them as his experiences. He was that fairly classic, not wanting to show vulnerability. And so he talked about it as a generality instead of something that, look, this is what happened to me, because I get it. When you're Mr. Big Bad and when your big public persona is a villain, you can't show vulnerability. And this is probably something that actually meant a lot to him. It was something he actually cared about, which is why it seemed out of step. It hit harder. It seemed uncharacteristic because he actually gave a fuck at that moment and was trying to cover it up. But I get it. I get not wanting to seem vulnerable and so hiding how personal something is to him. And it is so, I really believe that things like this, things of victimization, actually have something of a life to them themselves. And of all the things he did, the thing that temporarily brought him down was connected to something that happened when he was a vulnerable child and preyed on by people he should have been able to trust. That is the evil of this crime. That is the evil of childhood sexual assault. It marks people. And in part it does that because of their own behavior, because they don't get help, because they don't face it, and they continue to do all these things that they think are character, but it's really symptomatic of trauma. A lot of people will probably react badly to this video because they don't like Milo. But like I said, the real test of whether you can be objective about something you believe, is to apply it to a person you cannot stand. And I have the most personal reasons in the world for loathing this guy. So if I can do this, if I can show him human compassion, and if I can show a little understanding, why can't the outrage warriors laughing at him right now on Twitter?